Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Henchman's Memoirs. This is our Dark Souls of Drakkenheim campaign diary for our 5th edition game. And when we last left our heroes, they were trying to get back out of the sort of flooded portion of my Drakkenheim city that I have set up. They were coming from Reed Manor, where they had just dealt with the malfeasant wizard Oscar Yoren, and now all they wanted to do was get back to Eckerman's Mill and get a chance to rest up. But I had set up this idea where there was this broad, flooded, sort of festering area, and some adventurers had built sort of a kind of a hopscotch sort of trail from one relatively dry place to another, made of bits of old bridges and ladders and fallen logs and whatever else was available. And so the players were trying to use this to get back out of the area. Now, last time when they had been coming in, I had set up the idea. They had seen in the distance this creepy looking something. I described it walking across kind of against the horizon like Bigfoot in that famous footage. And for stats, I was actually using the Grey Nisp, again, from Necromancer Games' 5th edition Foes. Just an absolutely awesome monster book that takes a bunch of 1st and 2nd edition monsters, updates them for 5e, and then includes just a bunch more cool black and white art, a lot of cool monsters and cool ideas. So I had the idea that the Grey Nisp was kind of the Bigfoot of this bog area. And I wanted to talk about these two encounters because a lot of times random encounters like these, especially if you're just trying to get out of the city, can be a little bit pointless, especially in 5th edition. This guy attacks the party. He's tough, but he's not going to total party kill them. So there's a worry that it just becomes an exercise in dice rolling and, counting down hit points until you can move on. But this actually worked out much better than that. So the players in the Drakkenheim rules, everybody rolls a d20 for every hour that you're traveling through the haunted ruins. And if anybody rolls a 1, you get an encounter. I already had this encounter waiting and ready to go when somebody rolled a 1. They had reached a place where there was a break in the sort of trail, and so they were going to have to, they got out here and they were going to have to grab this ladder and sort of move it over here. And they were in the process of doing that when the Grey Nisp attacked. It stuck its head up out of the water, and just the eyes, just the very top part of its head, like a crocodile, and the eyes glowed with an eerie green light, and everybody had to make a save versus slow. So the cool thing about the Grey Nisp is he has a few ranged abilities. And so I was able to use those to make this encounter more interesting. Obviously, he has a swim speed, but there's a bunch of dangerous eels swimming around in this water. The characters knew that from their time coming in. So they did not want to get in the water in any case, and they're a little bit weak on ranged weapons. So he tries to hit him with a slow. I think they all saved from it, or maybe they had one round where they were slowed or something, and he comes up out of the water to try to fight the group. The Thaddeus, the druid, was able to summon a little beast. He decided for a land-based beast because this thing was coming up out of the water, like just its feet were left in water. And the party starts fighting it. And this is where it definitely is in danger of just becoming a dice rolling sort of exercise. So now Atticus really wants to take on the role of party tank. So he steps up and is toe-to-toe with this thing. And I mean, it deals decent damage. It has something we had in previous editions of the game, rend ability, where if it hits with both of its claws, it does extra damage on top of that. So it was doing some damage to him, but I knew there was no way this thing was going to get taken down by them. But in 5th edition, I can use the disengage action on my turn to just swim away. So that's what I did. And at first the party thought, oh, okay, well, he's gone now, and, let's move on. But I think I kept everybody in turns. We were still in initiative order. And, they kind of had an idea that something fishy, pun not intended, was going on. So they started to move across here, and I gave them really tough perception checks to be able to spot this guy swimming around in this muddy water. But Pietro the monk rolled really well and saw him, and he was kind of swimming around over here. I think he tried to drop a confusion on them, or maybe on all of these guys at this point. That's another ability he has. So the monk and the beast decide they're going to try to get out here and see if they can somehow fight him. So I decided on his turn he was going to swim underneath this bridge and try to reach up and grab the spokes of it there and just break it and dump both of them into the water. He's strong. He's very strong, but anybody can roll a 3, and I think I did. And so he's under the bridge trying to pull it up. The beast is like trying to bite his claws, bite the hands that are grabbing hold of this thing. I gave him disadvantage, and our artificer gets up here and is readying some kind of lightning lure. Everybody's kind of getting in position, and but again, they're starting to wear him down. Just this thing being able to fight him, and I think Nexel had. Oh no, our artificer did some kind of thunder wave thing that under the water pushed him back and did some damage to him, and so now he's like down to 15 hit points or something like that. So again, he decides to swim off, and this time he decided to swim off for good because he was pretty low on hit points, and I wanted him to join the sort of Sinister Six situation that the party is getting into, where all of these enemies have escaped them, and I've been threatening that they're all going to meet up somewhere and they're all going to form a group specifically to bring down these players. So he swims off, but it was an interesting encounter because it forced them to focus on range. They couldn't get a lot of stuff done because he was under the water, and if he had been able to get better effect with one of those confusion spells or something, could have been an interesting encounter, but it went pretty well. So now the party gets a little further along, and I've switched it around now to where this is the white is the solid ground, and there's just some patches of mud and filth that are kind of difficult terrain, but they're basically wending their way through that and trying to get back to Eckerman's Mill. And again, somebody rolled a 1 for me. So now I was out of pre-planned encounters based on the terrain. I made the players roll on the encounter in the book, and the encounter that came up reminded me enough of something that I had in my hip pocket that I went ahead and did it. So I had this mini, which is like a tombstone elemental. See, his hand is made out of a tombstone, and his shield is made out of an angel, and his face is kind of made out of a screaming angel tombstone or something like that. And on his back, he has like the gates from a graveyard or something. So I quickly described how they were actually moving through this area where there were all these tombstones at weird angles, and it was obviously a flooded and sort of swampified graveyard. And so when they rolled this encounter, this guy comes up. So in Drakkenheim, you can decide if you're moving slow, regular, or fast. They were moving regular, so they have a chance to kind of spot something a little further off. So I said he was like 60 feet away when we rolled for initiative. And I think Nexel tried casting, Frostbite or something on him. He moves up 30 feet, so now he's just like 10 feet away from the party. And against Pietor, who's in the front, he uses this ability he has to basically magically bury you alive if you fail a saving throw, right? So this pit opens up underneath Pietor's feet, like, the 6 feet deep coffin-shaped hole opens up under his feet. He rolled his save, so he was able to jump out of the way at the last second. But this is when my party, who doesn't always table talk to each other, they like to stay in character and, well, this is what my character would do, and this is what my character knows, so on and so forth. But this time, they kind of stopped. They're like, are we running from this thing? Are we going to fight this thing today, or are we just going to run from this? So they decided they wanted to run. We retconned it where Nexel didn't do that, and instead, after Peter made that saving throw, I dug out my Dungeon Master's Guide, and we went to the chase rules. If you haven't used the chase rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide, I recommend you go ahead and try them. They're kind of interesting. Basically, what starts happening is everybody's moving at their movement every round. You don't have to, move the minis all across the table or anything else. It's assumed if everybody's at around the same speed, they're going to stay about the same distance from each other. And then you roll these interesting events that happen. Well, so Thaddeus just turned into like a jaguar or something and just took off, and disappeared from the chase in about the first round. And the monk had some kind of nonsense class ability that let him take off running at a prodigious speed. But the way it works in the book, you roll a d20 every round for a complication or an event. And if you roll a 1 through 10, something happens, but it actually happens to the person behind you, which is a little bit weird, but whatever. So they start rolling these different sort of complications. And, there's minor little things. Maybe you take a couple D6 of damage from something, or you have to make a reflex save, or, you have to make a dexterity saving throw or something like that, or you lose some of your movement. So they were struggling to make all these saves and not get slowed down. There was a whole bunch of crabs, a whole bunch of albino crabs came boiling up out of the mud because the footprints of this thing were slamming down, and mud's being thrown up in people's eyes, and people are reaching slippery spots. And for a moment, it looked like they were just going to have to stop and fight the thing, but they managed to stay just like 10 feet ahead of it as everybody is kind of hustling along. And there's a time limit in the rules in the DMG, because you can only dash for a number of rounds, like equal to 5 plus your Constitution modifier, something like that. So obviously this thing has Constitution out the wazoo, and he's gonna be able to catch them unless a complication saves the day. And it definitely did. So Atticus rolled a complication about, I can't remember exactly how it was worded, but the idea was that you would slide down a hill, or you would kind of slide off the path a little bit. And if you failed this saving throw, so I described it to the party. There's this deep sort of ditch that goes into a lower area of the swamp, and they're all running around it. And this guy comes up to it, and he's trying to cut it kind of close. He failed his dexterity saving throw, and so he goes sliding down this incline. It was D4 times 10 feet high, and of course I rolled a 4. So now it's 40 feet down, and it's trying to claw its way back up this muddy incline. Of course, it's never going to be able to get back up there. And so they stop. He stops. He yells ahead to Thaddeus. I was like, is your character looking over his shoulder? He's like, probably not for a few rounds. I'm probably just going to run flat out for a while, until I get to the point where all the little bridges were and stuff, which they were about to reach. And so the monk is describing his character like yelling into the distance. It's like, hey, Thaddeus, Finally, Thaddeus turns around and they head back. They went back to Eckerman's Mill, which I just have to say, those two encounters worked really well as sort of random encounters. Anyway, the party made their way back. They make their way back to Camp Dawn and speak to High Flamekeeper Ophelia Reed, and basically, they want to turn in their quest, and why isn't my? There we go. They want to turn in their quest and all that good stuff. So they do. They get paid. They have the research on how to make Aqua Expurgo, the stuff that protects you from corruption, from contamination, and they have the Eldritch Lilies to do it with. And so they're like, oh, we think you guys should try to team up with the Hooded Lanterns who need these things. And they did some good role-playing. I don't know if any other party has this situation. Sometimes the character with the best charisma does not match the player who usually takes the lead in talking to NPCs. Sometimes it's just based on, the situation, right? You may be the only one who speaks Kobold, or somebody may just naturally be the one who would be talking to this NPC. But then all of a sudden when I'm like, okay, you say this, they say this, okay, we'll make a persuasion check. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait a minute. Nexel should have been talking this whole time. Well, so sad, too bad, you're dad. So they did manage to pull off some pretty good persuasion rolls. But I noticed in the book, it said that the Silver Order is kind of divided about whether or not they should be using something based on sort of corrupted plants and delirium and stuff. They're here to destroy delirium. But the players, convinced them, if you're going to succeed in your mission, you're going to have to use this stuff. But they weren't willing to make it. So the players kind of rolled their eyes. They're like, great. So now we need to go talk to the Amethyst Academy people. Maybe they will be willing to make some of this stuff for us. So she told them about River, which is this lieutenant in the Amethyst Academy faction, back over at Emberwood Village. And so they headed over to Emberwood Village. They did a little bit of shopping. It was starting to get kind of late in our day, so we didn't really leave it on a cliffhanger. They decided they were going to try to make contact with the Amethyst Academy folks there in Emberwood Village. All right, if you're enjoying these, please let us know. Give us a comment just to encourage us to keep putting this content out, and give us a like and a subscribe so we can get noticed by more people. Thanks a lot.